Ethan Cole had not turned on the garage light in 51 days. The garage sat behind his small ranch house in Ohio, a normal house in a normal neighborhood, the kind with trimmed lawns, American flags on porches and pickup trucks parked in driveways. Inside that garage, under a gray sheet, was a half-built dining table. The legs were attached but uneven. The top boards were cut but not secured. One plank had a mistake in it, a small split near the edge. Ethan had seen that crack and decided it meant something. It meant he wasn't ready. It meant he wasn't skilled enough. It meant maybe this wasn't for him. He worked as a project coordinator for a logistics company, 34 years old, decent salary, health insurance, a 401k he barely understood, no wife, no kids, a life that looked fine on paper. But every evening when he pulled into his driveway, he looked at the garage, and every evening he said, "Tomorrow, tomorrow when I'm less tired, tomorrow when work slows down, tomorrow when I feel more motivated." Tomorrow kept moving. His father had worked construction, a quiet man who believed in doing things yourself. He used to say, "If you can build it, you don't have to wait for anyone." Ethan had believed that once, but believing and doing were not the same thing. Across the street lived Mr. Alvarez, retired firefighter, 68 years old, walked slowly but stood straight. His garage door was always open inside. There was always something in progress, a cabinet, a stool, a birdhouse, a small wooden cross, a repair job for a neighbor. Nothing dramatic, nothing fancy. Just steady work. One Saturday morning, Ethan stood at his kitchen window with a cup of black coffee and watched Mr. Alvarez sanding a chair leg. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Alvarez stopped. He wiped the wood, cleaned the sandpaper, turned off the light, closed the garage. That was it. Ethan stepped outside. "You're done already?" he called across the street. Alvarez smiled. "For today, you only worked like 15 minutes. 15 honest minutes," he said. "That's enough." Ethan crossed the street. "Don't you want to finish it faster?" Mr. Alvarez leaned on the chair. "Son, I'm not racing anyone. I just don't want to stop building." That sentence stayed with Ethan longer than he expected. I just don't want to stop building. That evening, Ethan walked into his garage. He didn't make a plan. He didn't watch a tutorial. He didn't measure anything. He just pulled the sheet off the table. Dust rose into the air. The wood smelled familiar, like his childhood, like sawdust and effort. He picked up a sanding block. 5 minutes. He smoothed one edge of one plank. That was all. Then he stopped. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel transformed. He just turned off the light and went inside. The next night he did 6 minutes. The night after that, 3. One night he only walked into the garage, touched the table, and walked back out. But he opened the door. That became the rule. Open the door, even if nothing big happens. 2 weeks later, work exploded. A major client threatened to leave. Deadlines stacked up. Emails multiplied. His phone buzzed late into the night. Ethan came home exhausted. He looked at the garage. He told himself, "I'll get back to it next week." 1 week passed, then 2. The dust returned. On a Thursday evening, he saw Mr. Alvarez outside again, working on the same chair. "You're still on that thing?" Ethan asked. Alvarez laughed. "I had the flu last week. Doesn't it bother you?" Starting, stopping, starting again, Mr. Alvarez set the chair upright. Life starts and stops. The only mistake is thinking you have to be perfect every day. Ethan nodded. "Consistency doesn't mean daily greatness," Mr. Alvarez continued. "It means coming back, coming back." That night, Ethan turned on the garage light again. 3 minutes. That was all. But he was back. Something changed after that. Not dramatically. He didn't wake up earlier. He didn't become ultra-disciplined. He didn't post about it online. He just kept coming back. Some nights were 10 minutes. Some nights were 2. On Sundays, Maybe 20. He fixed the cracked plank instead of replacing it. He adjusted the legs. He remeasured angles. Slowly, the table began to look real. Not perfect, but solid. He started noticing something else to Dot at work. He felt slightly different. When a problem came up, he didn't panic as quickly. When a task felt overwhelming, he broke it down. 5 minutes. Just like the garage. He stopped thinking about motivation. He thought about return. Can I return tomorrow? That was the only question. On a cool October evening, Ethan attached the final board. He stepped back. The table stood in the center of the garage. One corner wasn't perfectly flush. The stain was slightly uneven. One leg was off by maybe a quarter inch. But it stood. He ran his hand across the surface. Solid. He carried it into his dining room alone. It was heavier than he expected. He placed it near the window. The house looked different with it there. Not because it was beautiful, but because it existed. Because he finished it. No applause. No announcement. No dramatic music. Just quiet satisfaction. He sat at the table that night with a frozen dinner and a glass of water. And for the first time in a long while, he felt steady. The next morning, he knocked on Mr. Alvarez's door. I finished it, Ethan said. Alvarez smiled. I knew you would. How? Because you kept opening the door. They stood there for a moment. I thought finishing would feel bigger, Ethan admitted. Mr. Alvarez nodded. Finishing rarely feels big. It feels calm. Calm, that was the word. Ethan realized something important. The table wasn't the real win. The real win was becoming someone who returns. Not someone who waits for perfect timing. Not someone who needs motivation. Not someone who quits after a break. Someone who comes back. A week later, Ethan began sketching something new. A small bookshelf. Nothing ambitious. He wrote at the top of the page, build after work. Not change your life. Not become. Unstoppable. Not hustle. Just build. He understood now that most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they stop returning. Dreams don't disappear in one dramatic moment. They fade quietly when doors stay closed. Ethan kept the garage light on. That winter. Some nights it glowed for 5 minutes. Some nights for 15. Sometimes neighbors walked past and didn't notice. But Ethan knew. He wasn't building furniture. He was building proof. Proof that small effort counts. Proof that stopping isn't failure. Proof that returning is power. Years later, when friends visited, they'd sit at his table. They'd place drinks on his shelves. They'd compliment his work. He would shrug and say, it took a while. He never explained how long. Because time wasn't the point. Coming back was. Most people are waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting for more time, waiting for a better season of life. But progress does not require perfect conditions. It requires return. 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Even one. Open the door. Touch the work. Then come back tomorrow. Not because you are inspired, not because you are disciplined, not because you are chasing applause, but because you are becoming someone who finishes, and that changes everything.